So we are going to have a very quick overview. So with me here, I have my terminal. I'll navigate to the desktop. I think there is some. Okay, this is my terminal and it's currently under the directory where we created our project and also our virtual environment. So in here, I'll activate my virtual environment, and we said that on Linux, this is how to do it: bin and activate. And I also hope you are able to remember how you do it on Windows. All right. Then the next thing, I'll change my directory to our Django project. All right. Then if I ls, I'm able to see the Django directory here, the project directory, and a file named manage.py, and of course the db.sqlite3, which again we said that this is a file-based database which our Django project will be using. All right. So just to do a quick recap on how we found or we were able to generate the three files that we have here, we did execute a command that is we have Django admin, we have start project, then we gave our project a name. Okay, so this is what give us the three or these the files here, the files and directories here. All right, so we had Django admin start project, and again we said in case you have not installed Django in your current environment, you'll get an error when you try to execute this command. All right, so then we went ahead after we generated these files here. Actually, we were able to generate Django project and manage.py file. Okay. Then after we started our local server, that is when this file popped up. All right. So don't be worried once you create a project and you're not able to see the db.sqlite3 file. Okay. Then from here, we can, or we did start our local server by having python manage.py, then we run server. Okay, then from here, we are able to see some stuff populating here. So this will be resolved later. Okay, some kind of a warning, but not an error. Okay, then there is this IP here that we are told that starting development server at, so you can always copy this, but once you have copied it severally, you'll always need to open your browser and just type in say 127 and you should get it there. But in this case, we can always paste that. Okay, so this is the very first page that we were able to see. Okay, simply showing that one, we are seeing this because debug is set to true, and again we have not defined this path because again remember whatever URL that you visit on a given website, there should be a page to be returned for that URL. Otherwise, if no page or no URL has been defined, then you should get an error. I'm sure you might have encountered an error for page not found error. Okay, so in this case, we haven't defined this URL yet, but because we are still building our project, that is why Django returned a default page. But once we build a page for this homepage, this should actually be the URL for our homepage, then we are no longer going to see what we have here. Okay, so we are going to get there. So the other thing was just a review of the various files and directories that were created here. So we are saying that our project has now the project directory here, and if we expand, it has quite a number of files here. All right, so the files of concern, or the files that we at least need to know what's inside, settings.py file and the urls.py file, because these two are the files that we will be interacting with most of the time. Okay, so in the settings.py file, if you remember, we did look at debug, which is currently set to true. So this simply means that we are able to see errors on the browser. All right. And by saying that we are able to see errors is in case something happens. Okay. In case there is an error, there is an exception, we will see it as it is. All right. So that happens only when debug is set to true. All right. But then we said that that is good when debugging your application. But once your application is done in the development stage, once it's taken to production, you can always set it to false so that end users will not see errors as they are. End users will see errors like 500. They need not see um, each and every detail of the error that occurred. All right. So it's for you to ensure that this is true in development, but in production, you remember to set it to false unless you are also debugging it in production, because again, you might also encounter say an error 500 once you take this project to production. Okay. So for you maybe to see the exact error, then you need to set this one to true. Once you're happy with the fix, then change it back to false. All right. Then we also talked about the allowed host here, and we said that once you take this project to production, it will not just work as it is. It will need you to either pass in the subdomain or the domain or the IP of the server from which the application or the project has been deployed. All right. So we pass them in here as a list. Okay. So the other thing that we talked about are the installed apps. And we said during our definition of the common terms, we said that one, we have a project and we also have an application. So the project is what we are looking at now. One that again contains the global configurations of our project. Okay, then from this we will be building some apps. Okay, so these apps, for the project to be aware these apps exist, we need to add them under installed apps. All right. So for the middleware, we say that well, there are minimal edits to be done here. Maybe not in this course, but just know that it's all about security matters here. All right. Then templates. This is something that we talked about, HTML templates that we are going to be defining, and we said that template is another key component of a Django project, as you will see later, because again, we will be creating a directory to store our templates. All right. So again, under here, you will tell this project where to check for those templates. All right. So there are some edits that we do here. So we are going to see that as well. Then the next key thing is the database. Okay, so your project requires a connection to a database. So currently we are making use of this file-based database here. Okay, but we said this is good in development. But once you take your project to production, we can do better than that. All right. We are going to configure a MySQL database in this course. All right, so we are going to alter this block here. Okay, so we already touched this. Okay, but as I mentioned, you are required to create a user account, and once you start keying your password, you realize that you cannot create a user, maybe because you have used 1234, or some characters without special characters, or uppercase and a mixture of those. So this is a block that takes care of those. All right. Then another thing that we mentioned here is the time zone here, which again we said you can influence how or the time zone that your project is operating on. And we saw the effect of that when we code the this command to run our local server. All right. So by using the right time zone, you are able to see the right time here. Okay. So the other thing about static, we are going to come back here. And as we said, static files are another key component of a Django project. And static files, we talked about the kind of images, CSS files, and JavaScript. All right. So again, we are going to be uh, guiding our project where to check for static files. And of course, we are going to be adding some related lines here. All right, to ensure that static files work properly. All right. Okay, so that is the settings.py file in a nutshell. The other thing that we said is that we are going to be building an app, okay, during this session. And once we build an app, we are going to link the app. Besides mentioning the app in the settings.py file at the installed app section, we are also going to now link it up using these paths. All right, so we will add the path for each and every app that we define. Then from the app, we can also define other URLs. Okay, we are going to see that. All right, so that's what we did on Friday. So I want us to consume the documentation a little bit. I don't so much rely on the documentation because sometimes I feel it's a bit hectic. Maybe when I just want just a single line, I know what I want. It's only that I'm not sure how the code should look like. But anyways, so let's look at something here. I would want us to look at the tutorial here. The tutorial requiring us to, okay, Django at a glance, writing here. All right, so let's do some copy pasting here so that we can see if we are able to. Okay, so in here, they kind of created the working directory, just like we created, I don't know, did I create Django tutorials? Okay, I created Django training, okay, and the desktop. So it is the same thing that happens here. All right. Then, well, as a by the way, you should also be able to appreciate some simple Linux commands so that you don't feel like this is a very hard thing. So this is a Linux command that simply tells your system to create a directory named this. Make dir simply means make directory. All right. Okay. So, okay. I also think it applies on Windows. Good enough. All right. Then once we created that, so in our case, we created these using the GUI, right click, give your directory a name and press enter. We did that. Then again, we went ahead to start a project. All right, we did this, and that is what we are currently exploring, like the settings.py file and the urls.py file. All right. Then in here, we are given how the project looks like. Okay, so we have the project directory, all right? And remember, once you create a project, say you create a project called Django project. So it will first create a directory named Django project. Then in that directory, you will get another directory with Django project, and that is where we find settings.py file, urls.py file, and the other files that we have already seen. Okay, then under the same level with this Django project, that is where we get manage.py file, and that's also where the db.sqli3 will be generated. Okay, so this is just a summary of the structure, and the structure in question, just how this file looks like. All right, so it's so crucial to just look at this and have a visual impression of that structure so that whenever things go wrong, you are able to know in case there is a file that has been misplaced. All right. Okay, then we have already done the run server command, and we have seen how that behaves. All right, so moving on, we want now to go and create an app. Okay, so that's basically all we have been talking about is a project. All right, so the next thing will be creating an app. Okay, so that is what we are supposed to do here. Okay, so what we can do, let me go back to my command prompt here. Stop the server. So to stop the server, you do Control C. All right, I'll clear my screen and then start an application. So you need to be under the root directory of your project. So by root directory in this case, you should be at the location where we have the manage.py file. Okay, so we do Python manage.py, we have start app, then you give your app a name. Okay, Python manage.py start app, then give your project a name. Okay, so in our case, we are not gonna create a Pulse app, but we are going to create a Django app. Okay, because here we have a Django project, and for currently I'm giving this name so that at least we can see the difference between a project and an app. Okay, so in here I'll start a Django app. Okay, so we don't get anything, we move to the new line, but something has happened. If you look at the structure here, we do not have this directory here, so a new directory has been created. Okay, moving on. So let's try now to explore what this app has for us, because again, we see it's a new directory. If we expand that, we don't have settings.py here, neither do we have urls.py file. Okay, but instead we have some other key files. All right, so by just looking at it, at least we can note a big difference between an app and a project. Okay, just look at the file structure. Okay, so for the project, we said that the key files are settings.py file and URLs. Then for app, we see we have we have quite a number of files here. Of course, you can see that there are some similar files. They need, but the key files in an app is one, the admin.py file. Okay, the other one is models.py file, and finally we have views.py file. Okay, so those are the files that we are going to be paying so much attention in this training, and that is where most of the edits will be happening. All right, so just a summary of what to expect. So for the admin.py file, remember when we were talking about the definition of the common terms, we said that you will get an admin interface. Okay, so the admin interface is there, but for some of the functions to be realized, you need to do some code here. Okay, so this file will handle some lines that will at least bring the admin interface to life and add more functionalities onto it. Okay, so we are going to see that. Then for the models.py file, remember we said that Django uses the ORM method, whereby you do not interact with database directly by writing SQL queries, but instead you create classes here which will be mapped to the database as tables. All right, and even when querying the database, instead of talking about select all from a certain database, we are going to see the commands or the code that we use instead of that. All right, unlike say other languages, other programming languages, whereby you interact with the database by using the SQL commands. All right, but for Django, we are going to see how it's done. Okay, so basically models, this is where we define the classes that will be mapped to the database as database tables. Okay, then for the views in here, we said the views are more or less like functions, okay, which again will be used to return responses and templates once a certain URL has been called. Okay, so a call will be done to a URL, which again will call a corresponding view. We are still going to see that in action. Okay, so under this app, we do not have a urls.py file. We don't have a file like this. Okay, so what we usually do, we usually create one. All right, so the best way to do it, click there, add a new file, and talk of urls.py. Okay, so we need this file, and we are going to see where we need it. Okay, so a connection will come from this one. It will join with the urls.py file of our file, and then to the views. Okay, I hope we are getting that. Let me create a new file here, notes.txt. Well, this file is not part of our project here, just for jotting down some notes here. Okay, so we are going to move from urls.py file. This is of the project. Okay, then that will take us to the urls.py file of our app. Okay, which again will now check under the views.py. Okay, so something like this will happen. Okay, all right, so let's go back to the documentation and see if there is anything we can pick up from there. Okay, so we are given some code for the views, so I'll just copy and paste everything as it is. I'll just do as it is here. Okay, I'll not remove that, but I'll add that. Okay, we have a view named index, which again receives a request here, and once it receives that, then it returns a HTTP response with hello world, you are at the polls index. Okay, all right, so back to the documentation. Again, in here we have something we are supposed to pass in the urls.py file. So I'll still copy everything here, take it back to my urls.py here. Okay, and for your information, this is the url.py file of the app. Okay, this app, remember, Django app, not for the project. Okay, so I'll add that block there. All right, then let me go back here. Okay, so all right, so in here you are being given the structure. Same thing we are seeing here. We have the app and we have the project down here. All right, then we need to do something to the urls.py file of the project. All right, so we need to add a line here. Okay, so well, I think from there, I think that's good enough. All right, so now let's go back to the urls.py file here of our project. Okay, so we said you need to link your project and your app. The first linking was or is supposed to be done in the settings.py file. All right, then the second one is through the urls.py file. So in here we have a line called path. Then in here we can decide to leave it blank, and I'll show you when you might need to pass in something. Then in here we have something we call include. Okay, and what are we including? So this is where you mention the app name. All right, which in our case we have Django app dot urls. All right, then once we have that, we need to import this. All right, we need to import this, so we import it under path. So we talk of include. Okay, so that's how to now link the urls of our project and for our app. All right, we have done the linking of the urls from our project to the urls in our app, And then that has also been linked to a view, and the view is named index. All right, let's first of all see how this app behaves. Okay, we have done some adjustments and we would want to see if anything has changed on our app. So I'll go back to the terminal here. I'll talk about Python manage.py, then I run server. Okay, so we have some unapplied migrations. Still don't worry about this warning. Let's go back here, reload. Okay, so we have this. Okay, and of course you can edit this message to, to contain anything. Think of x is equals to 9, then you decide to pass in something. I am x. Actually, let me call it age years old. Okay, then remember the formatting method. I believe that should work as well. Okay, still does that. Okay, so we have been able to link our app and our project using the URLs. But there is something that we have already mentioned about linking the project and the app, but we haven't done it yet. Okay, let me take you there. Let me take you there. So in here, we are in settings.py, navigate to apps. Remember what we said about installed apps? So for now, it works. All right, and we can even leave it as it is. But once we get to defining models, it will not work. Okay, so for now, we can leave it out so that once we get the error, at least we can see where to correct that. Okay, so at the installed apps, we are going to leave it as it is for now. Then once that need arises, we will come back here and do something. All right. Okay, so let's now try to build up something from what we already have. Okay, so think of an application, a very simple application that has, let me go back to my notes.txt. So at least we are now able to appreciate this path, moving from urls.py of the project, of the app, and now to the views. Okay, something I want us now to achieve is we have 127.0.0.1. I believe that's the URL for the localhost. Okay, so this is what we would call the home page. Okay, then in case you wanted something like contact us, we would have something like that, then contacts. Okay, could be contact hyphen us, or such stuff. Okay, okay, so we have something like that, and that we are calling it contact. Okay, then how about if we have about us? About. Okay, I'm sure you have already seen such in the some of the websites that you have visited. All right, so we want to achieve such a thing. Okay, but for now we still haven't imported any templates. We just want to, at least when we visit that link, it should take us to a page saying about us. All right, so for now, the homepage, let's treat our homepage to see that this is the homepage. So we can go back to the views. Okay, and remember the views are in the Django app. They are in our app, not our project. All right, so I'll do away with that. Then in here, all right, so if we come back here, that's okay. All right, and how are we getting this? If we look at the structure of the urls.py file from the project, okay, from the project to the app. So looking at what we have in the project, we don't have anything here. We have not defined any other element here. Okay. Similarly, once we get to URLs of the app, we don't have anything here. Okay. And that translates to what we are seeing here. All right. So in case we wanted maybe this page to be accessed under something like home. Okay. How would we do that? So we get an error 404. How about if we come back here in the app, add something like that, go back here, reload, okay, we get that. All right, so that's how to adjust that so that it can return the response that is under this URL. Okay, so each and every URL should be tied to a view. Okay, but you can have a view that is not linked to any URL and you not get an error. For instance, let me define another view here and now let me call it contact. Okay, response, this is the contact page. All right, so I have that, but if I reload here, I'll not get an error. But should I try to define a URL whose view does not exist, we will get an error. But before we get to demonstrate that, let us look at this URL pattern here. Okay, so it has some three components. All right, so the first component is the URL itself. Okay, talk of the domain name, the subdomain, or the IP slash something. Okay, that something is what we pass in here. All right, then this, once you call this URL, maybe from your browser, then it will check on the views that is supposed to handle that URL. Okay, so denoted by this views.index. So this index is the name of that view in the views.py file. All right, so for now we just have two views, but once we build, say, a bigger application, you can have as many views as possible. Okay, so it is the URL that you call that will now look at the view that should handle that URL. Okay, so in this case, the view is named index. Okay, and from this line here, we can see that we have imported all views under the URLs of the app so that you can reference them using views.index. So whatever name of the view that should handle this URL here should exist here, and that is the name that you should use here. All right, then we have this name attribute here. Okay, for now we can do without that name and it should still work as expected. So where does it apply? We will see its application once we start working on the HTML page, because for instance, if I come to this page here, okay, so news, if I click on news, I should be taken to one. I should down here, if you observe down here, once I hover on news, you can see that we have https www.djangoproject.com/weblog. Okay, so weblog is that part of weblog. Let me actually just click on that. So this part here is what we are having here. Okay, so this is what we are having. Actually, let me just replace that with weblog. All right, then in whatever in the URL that is handling this, or in a similar line of the code that powers this website, we have something we call views. Okay, dot, okay, whatever name they have given here, it must match with a view. All right. Then there is what I just deleted here, the name. All right. And it has been given index. All right. So these must not always be the same as what we have here. But for easier maintenance of your code, it is the best practice to have a common name. So where does this name apply? Let me mention it now, but we are going to see it in action. So under the HTML code of such a website, for us to reference WebRock here, we make use of this name, all right, and not this. Well, in case they are the same, well and good. But the purpose of this name, we are going to see it when building the header and probably the footer or any links to a new page. All right, we are going to make use of this name attribute or the name that has been defined here. All right, then what else? All right, so another thing I wanted to say is I had mentioned that you can have so many views here without necessarily matching them with a URL. All right, for now we are actually now working on the URLs of the app and the views.py. All right, so let's come here, create a new path or even a similar one. Maybe add in something like hello, nothing so serious. And I can also name these two as hello. Okay, so as it is, no harm. What about what happens here? It says attribute error. We are trying to call Django app.views and try to reference hero, but because hero is not defined, then we get an error. All right, but if you come back here and maybe name this one the contact as hero, okay, the server will be happy and it will continue with the rest of the operations. Okay, so we want to have something like this. Okay, such that once you visit the very first page, you can see the home page. You can also see the contact page and the about us page. All right. Okay, so let me see if we already have the home page. So for the home page, we said you can remove that. Okay, I think it's so common to name your home page index. Okay, but it is not mandatory. These names are just like variable names or function names, whereby you name it the best way you want. But again, at least it should make sense. At least we talked about the naming conventions in one of our sessions. So it is common to name the home page or the view for the home page index. So we are going to have it as it is. All right. So we have already taken care of that. If I do that, we see this is home page. Okay. Then the next thing is we want to have contact or maybe contact us. Let's have contact us. Okay. So what's the process? So the process is one, creating a URL for that, which again links to a view to handle that request. Okay. So okay. So let me rearrange this so that I can start with URLs, then the views. Okay, remember the urls.py for the project has already created that link. So we need not come back here to edit this or that. Okay, so what we need to do is we need to come back here, the urls.py of our app. Okay, so we can edit this to be contact us. Remember, the name that you put here is the one that should reflect here. All right, then in here I can edit these two and have contact. All right, contact. Then so from the urls.py file, I move to the views.py file and create a view to handle that URL. Okay, and looking at the path here. It is not mandatory for you to start defining the path before you define the view. You can always define the view, and from the view, whatever name that you give here, then you can ensure that it reflects here. Because again, we said that as it is, it has already broken our server. Okay, because again, there is no view that exists with this name. Okay, so you come in here to the views.py, define contact, okay, which again you pass in a request. Then for now you can return a HTTP response with this page. Initially we were told that it is not found, error 404. Okay, if you reload, we see that this is the contact us page. All right, very easy. Okay, so let's go back here, view our notes. Okay, we should have contact us instead. Then we would want one for about, or even about us. Okay, so let's work with about. If you come here, talk about, do that, you get an error 404. This is simply because one, there is no URL defined to handle that request, because again, this is the request that will be coming from the user. Okay, so if the server is not able to satisfy that request simply because it is not able to match the requested URL and the available URLs, then it will throw an error 404. This error, we get it simply because this URL is not defined. Okay, so once you get such an error, no need to panic, just go directly to one, you can have a quick check and the urls.py file of your project. All right, then see if the project and the app are linked using a path. Okay, then follow that path and see if now the actual requested URL is defined here. So seems it's not defined, so we can define one and talk about. Okay, then remember, okay, so let me first start with the views. All right, I think this sounds like the best approach. Start with the views, call it about, do a request, then return HTTP response and say this is the about us page. If we do that, of course, we have already created the view. So if we go back and try to reload that, of course, we do not get anything because remember, the URL is the one that takes us to the view. Okay, so in case this URL exists, it is the one that should look at the view and look at what the view is supposed to do once it's called. If you remember when we talked about functions, we said you can define a function, but if you don't call the function, nothing will happen. Okay, so for a function to work, you need to call it. All right, so similarly, you can define a view, which we said that this is a function, literally. Okay, but if you don't call it, then nothing will happen. And the common way of calling a view is through the URLs. All right, so let's come back to the URLs of our app and now create that path. So we have views dot, this is about, we can pass in a name is equals to, and we said, while you have the freedom of giving it a totally different name, it is a good practice to have these two match. Okay, for now we haven't utilized this name yet, but as I said, we are going to use it somewhere. But for now, as it is, even if you removed this, everything else should work as expected. So for about, once we define it there and reload that, this is about us page. Okay, so we are able to move from the home page. Okay, we have contact us, and we have the home page. Contact us. Okay, and we now have about us. And of course, we can go on and on defining other pages. All right, so that's just an introduction to views and URLs.